How are you fluff muffins doing? Are you up for some rambles? I want to talk a little bit about how YouTube has changed me. How it caused this metamorphosis of evil. Or rather, how it made me grow a thicker skin. When I first started in 2007, a lot of things were different. I didn't know what I know now, and I was pretty naive in some ways. When I first started making videos about opinions, of course, as soon as you express any kind of opinion, it's going to piss somebody off, and somebody's going to get offended, and somebody's going to, try to destroy you just because. And it was pretty rare back then. I mean, considering the size of my main channel, it's still quite rare compared to a lot of channels. But back then it was really exceptional. Back then when I made videos, most people were really, polite and respectful, and there wasn't a whole lot of bullshit, with some exceptions, of course, as always. And I was certainly naive in assuming that fundamentally people are mostly rational, and if you have a discussion with them and use good arguments, they will consider them and it may sway them. And then I time and time again ran into people who refuse that. They stick to their bias. I mean, we're all biased. We're humans. Our rationality is limited. We're all irrational about some beliefs and some thought patterns, and we're not perfectly logical. Some people drive that to new heights, where if you try to use arguments against any conviction they have, they just shut down and will stop listening to any actual arguments you say, and will just insult you and shout at you, and will, in fact, in some cases, arguing against their position will fortify their position, which is kind of strange. But yeah, so over time, I've learned that it's impossible to please everybody, which I should have realized from the start. But that's basically what I was trying in the beginning. I had this really naive thought that if you're being reasonable enough, then you're going to be okay. You're not going to piss too many people off, and no, that's not how it goes. It's not how it goes at all. And I used to have so many debates with people in the comments. I used to even debate religion and politics and all kinds of things, social issues and whatnot. And it led to long back and forth comment exchanges, which usually led to nothing at all. After several days of back and forth, the positions were still entrenched. The other person was still insisting that, no, you're so wrong, and I was still insisting that, no, you're wrong, and nothing really happened, and it was a complete and utter waste of time. Now, there are productive debates, of course, and those should happen, those are useful, but online, I found more often than not, it is not productive, and it's a complete waste of time. In face-to-face interaction, it can be more productive. Can be, not necessarily. But online interaction is a different beast, it seems. Again, there's exceptions. Sometimes people do actually reconsider, but more often than not, it was just a waste. And at first, when you suddenly get hate out of nowhere and you don't expect it at all, like you expressed an opinion, or you made some kind of video which there was no ill intent, and you didn't think that anybody would be having an emotional fit over it, but it happens. Out of nowhere, somebody will freak out and treat you like you're the worst thing on the planet, and they will just lose it. and throw all kinds of insults at you and will try their damnedest to criticize every little thing you do. And at first, like, what's happening? What confusion, Confusion at first. Then there is a time period where you take everything too much to heart, and it's like, oh no, what is all this criticism? What am I doing? Am I really such a terrible piece of shit? And then self-confidence can take a hit or something for a while, and then you can also get into defensive phases where it's like, oh, fuck all these people, how dare they? And eventually you kind of mellow out. That's where I'm at now. So now it's like whenever I see some hate comments, like, that's funny. It's really more amusing now, because when I see somebody who just starts out with an insult, it's just like I can see the neckbeard in his mom's basement raging. That's really all I see now. It's somebody who has serious issues, and that's what it is. And in most cases, people who are super aggressive with others and extremely disrespectful and talk trash about everybody and try to dismantle every little thing that somebody does and find all of their flaws. These people are, well, in some cases, straight up psychos. That's a thing. They're either psychopaths or sociopaths, or they have some kind of issue. They've been heavily bullied, or they suffer from extreme stress at work or in a relationship, or they don't even have a relationship, or something is seriously wrong with their life, and then they try to take it out on others, which, it shouldn't be funny. To be fair, it's really more sad. But when I do see a lot of those comments, it is kind of funny. The way how pathetic it is. So now it's just like, most of the time I just shrug it off, like, whatever, let's move on. And occasionally I still stop to think for a moment, like, oh, am I starting to go down the path of one of those self-righteous, arrogant bastards who are like, yep, I'm above all of you dirty peasants and nothing you say will touch me. That's also, of course, not good. You still need to be open to constructive criticism, but it's just that over time you get better at distinguishing constructive criticism from vitriolic hatred, essentially. It becomes more and more obvious, and I will still very much consider any kind of constructive feedback, saying, this thing that you did, I don't like it because this, and that. If they just say, I don't like what you did, without explaining, then that's not useful, that's not constructive. But if they actually explain, like, oh, there's this, and that thing that I don't like, then yes, I will consider that, absolutely. Sometimes, admittedly, it happens occasionally that somebody will write this huge paragraph, like this novel of, and here is all the things, everything you did wrong, and I'm going to analyze it to death, and here's all the reasons for why you suck. And that's a bit much, maybe. I mean, it's just a bit much to read, because time is rare, and there's way too many comments and everything. Some people go quite far on it. But, more power to them. It's good if they know how to express themselves well. And, but at some point you also have to step back from things a little bit. Because if you just keep soaking up all the negativity, even if it's well-intentioned, at some point it can drag you down, and it can kind of paralyze you. And, what can I do? How can I fix all of this? And sometimes you don't always need to, just because somebody has this really strong objection to what you're doing doesn't mean that you need to always stop and change everything. Of course, you sometimes just gotta keep doing what you do, re-examine every now and then what you're doing and how you could improve it, but you also need to stick to your guns to an extent, because if you if you let yourself be swayed by everything that somebody at some time says, you're just going to be lost. You're just going to be lost and confused, and you can't change constantly because, even if there are two different or several different people who have, perfectly rational and valid objections and good criticisms, still have very different opinions, you cannot reconcile that. You cannot please all of these people. Because the one thing you change that this person says is really bad will upset the other person because they think that this is what you're supposed to do. What that person wants you to change, they want you to do more of. And that happens all the time. So at some point you also have to just realize that, well, it is impossible to please everyone. You will lose your mind if you try to follow every single little thing that everybody says, because they all contradict each other. Everybody likes something different and defines quality in a different way, and you have to make up your own mind as to what you think is quality and what you do right and in which ways you do them. But I do wish that people were less confrontational and inflammatory these days. I mean, these people nowadays statements are usually very flawed because you cannot generalize an entire era or even just a single year and an entire population and the entire world and blah blah blah, everything, generalize it in one broad sweeping stroke. But it does seem to me that people are getting so much more polarized than they were, like to absolutely ridiculous extents. Everybody is fighting everybody else. People fight over, political affiliation, over opinion on laws, over diet, over fashion, over games, over everything in the world. And it gets more and more extreme, where you used to see stuff like, let's say vegetarians and omnivores argue which diet is healthier or more ethical and whatever. But now you have not just vegetarians versus omnivores, you have vegans versus vegetarians versus omnivores versus carnivores. Apparently that's a thing now, where people eat literally nothing but meat. And people who do frickin' fruit cleanses where they have nothing but fruit juice or nothing but fruit overall. And it's just, everything is so extreme. It's like, oh well, I probably shouldn't get into stuff like that, because that alone, diet alone, is a thing where people will completely lose their shit. I've seen it, even like a passing remark about something will make people absolutely lose their mind about, how dare you, I'll fucking kill you. So yeah, everything is extreme. It's not a good thing. Moderation. There's probably militant moderationists too, where it's like everything needs to be the perfect balance, because people nowadays have to turn everything to an extreme, including being moderate. Perhaps, I don't know. Anyway, thanks for listening to my incoherent rambles, and have a good one.